this week's episode of The Business of Tattooing, we're turning up the volume on raw talent, vibrant color, and unapologetic artistry. She's one of the most exciting tattooers making waves right now, known for jaw-dropping color realism, surrealist magic, and portrait work that stops you in your tracks. Straight out of Franklin, Tennessee, she's one of the creative forces behind Golden Yeti, an art collective built on bold vision and fierce independence. But beyond the needle, she's a master of flow, a muralist, a mentor, and a true student of the game, constantly leveling up, giving back, and staying humble through it all. Today, we go deep with Mary Blake. We're talking artistic evolution, creative rituals, mental health, and what it really means to build something that lasts in today's tattoo industry. If you don't already know her name, you will after this. Let's go on another journey through the business of tattooing. Yeah. Do you guys do a podcast?
Yeah, I have one with my friend Chelsea Wagner Hamilton, called The Blast Over. We just talk about whatever, It's like lightly tattoo related because we're both tattoo artists, but we talk about just our lives, like stuff that we see on the internet, whatever.
Yeah, I got to write that down because I definitely want to hear it.
Yeah, we just started finally recording again after a long break, which is totally my fault. The last year was not great for me, so we took a little time off recording, but we're coming back.
That's cool. How many episodes do you have?
I'm gonna be honest, I'm not even sure, like maybe 10 or so.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, we started off with a different format than what we're doing now. In the beginning, we were trying to keep the episodes a little shorter because that's what we thought people wanted was like quick little,
Really?
30, 45-minute episodes. And then everyone just kept asking like longer, longer, longer. So now we're just yapping for 1 to 2 hours and just throwing it out there.
Yeah, yeah. It's crazy because it's totally opposite of social media where everybody's just like flip, 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 flip.
Yeah.
4 seconds. Like if you look at your analytics on your videos, well, at least for me, it's like
Hmm.
most people are just watching like the first 5 seconds of my videos, and I'm just like, dang. But then when I'm doing it, I'm doing the same thing. I'm just like zip,
Yeah.
zip, zip, zip. But when I listen to podcasts, I want to listen to the whole damn thing. But
Hmm.
so it's crazy. I feel you. But yeah, I feel like that's something that you always have to evolve and kind of adapt, and that's kind of the fun part of the podcast is there's kind of not all those stupid strict rules that you have with social media and algorithms and stuff like that to try to contend with.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I tell Chelsea all the time. I'm like, you'd be surprised what people want to hear you say. You think that they wouldn't care about you talking about your day or the little errands that you ran, but people like hearing that stuff.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. But it kind of goes hand in hand with like how popular reality TV is. I mean, it's the same
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
People are just always interested in what other people's doing in their lives, like what do you
Yeah.
people are just like the nosy neighbor syndrome all the time,
Oh,
like they
I'm
want to know.
guilty.
Yeah.
I love watching those videos.
I know, me too. Me too. So well, let's talk about, we don't have to, obviously the business of tattooing and we want to talk a lot about tattooing, but also want to talk about, your art and just what inspires you as a creative person and, really get to know who Mary Blake is on a deeper level, right?
Mhm.
Past the tattoo
Yeah.
needle. Yeah.
Thanks. I
So
appreciate that.
yeah. So, how long have you been tattooing now? Like over 10 years now?
Yeah, for sure over 10. I always say like roughly 13. Professionally closer to 12 than 13. But when I first started, it was like a lot of people out of the house.
Yeah, yeah. In your area
Yeah.
specifically,
Um,
or just in
well,
general, you're saying?
it just in general. Yeah, when I first started getting tattooed, I waited until I was 18 because I don't know why. I thought I was going to be getting a good tattoo when I was 18, but that was not the case. My first tattoo was terrible. But then I just went to a local shop in Columbia where I live, Columbia, Tennessee, and asked the guys there if they were looking for an apprentice, and they already had one at the time, and they told me, they told me this. I didn't do this of my own volition, but they said go get a machine, get a setup, and tattoo out of your house. And if you still want to do this next year, then we'll hire you. So, so I went and I ordered some shitty, tattoo setup from Amazon probably, and it was like early fall at the time. So I started tattooing pumpkins in my apartment, and
Why
then myself, and then other people.
did you have a thing? Why pumpkins specifically? What was the deal with pumpkins?
Well, I had read somewhere that you can tattoo any skinned fruit. So like any sort of people do oranges a lot,
Yeah, yeah,
bananas, pumpkin,
yeah,
squash. Um, and I mean it worked out. It was pretty cool looking, but I had that false bravado where I was like, "Oh, this looks okay. I can move on to skin now."
yeah,
And then
yeah.
and then I started tattooing myself and did not turn out so well.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know that I've ever actually tattooed on a pumpkin or even heard of anybody else doing that really. I think it would be weird because you have all those like high and low spots. Like,
Yeah. Well, that was my thinking was like, fake skin, a lot of people are tattooing it when it's completely flat. So you're not really getting the idea that nobody is flat. We all have curves and pumpkins have curves.
yeah. So you're trying to tattoo with the anatomy of the pumpkin, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Something
gonna
like that.
I'm gonna have to try that actually, I think. So
It's
that'd be,
pretty funny.
yeah, yeah. So when you first picked up a machine for the first time, had you had any experience with tattooing prior to that at all?
No, not at all. I got into tattooing because of Miami Ink back in the day.
Okay.
I was I think like 14 years old and saw the show and was just like I want to do this. And I told my parents and they were all like, "Yeah, yeah, sure, whatever." But I have an older brother who's about 6 years older than me. So he started getting tattooed kind of around that time too. So I was living vicariously through him, seeing the tattoos that he was getting and just kind of planning when I can start tattooing.
Okay. So, but before that, you obviously were interested in art. You had been doing art already. You must have a passion for this.
Yeah, my whole life I've been doing art. I can remember being in kindergarten tracing coloring book pages and doing outlines of stuff and that kind of transitioned to drawing my favorite cartoon characters and then I got into anime and that went to portraits and realism and that's kind of where I've stayed ever since. But I've been doing portrait work since I was in high school. Yeah.
Okay. Did you ever have any, did you ever have any aspirations or thoughts that you would pursue a different artistic career, or what kind of were your dreams before tattooing became a part of your life?
Oh yeah. Well, my very first dream when I was younger was to be an Egyptologist. I wanted to go to the pyramids and be like digging through the dirt and finding stuff. But then I found art fulfilled me a little more and I actually graduated high school with the intention of becoming an art teacher. Um, I live in Tennessee, and unfortunately, that's one of the states where they started to cut the arts programs kind of early on.
Okay.
So I began my like education 101 class in college, and the teacher of that told us all like get out now, get out while you can, change your major. You don't want to be doing this. It's not gonna work out for you. And I was like, okay, enough said. Like I'm out. So I swapped my major to just a standard like business degree. And then I went back to the shop and that's when I asked them about an apprenticeship and started a year later. And I actually graduated from college while I was tattooing.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So when did you find let's talk about Golden Yeti and how that all came about and uh how did that end up being home for you and how did that journey happen?
Yeah, so I was at this shop in Columbia for only 3 years or so. I finished my apprenticeship and then I was there for a couple more years, and I had kind of reached the point where I knew I wanted to move on. You know, you can only learn so much from the people that you work with, and then there comes a point where you have to either pursue education on your own or just find another shop and learn from those people. Specifically, I wanted a back piece so bad. I wanted to get my back tattoo, and I didn't trust anyone at the shop that I was at to do it, or anyone in the town, to be honest. So I got on Google and I just searched tattoo artists in Franklin, Tennessee, which is a little north of Columbia. It's a bigger town. And I just figured there'd be someone there because I knew I didn't want to go all the way to Nashville. And I found Jeff and Golden Yeti. And so I just reached out to him and I was like, hey, I have this idea for a back piece. I want to get it done. I like your work. Would you be interested? And it kind of just went from there. I started getting tattooed pretty regularly at the shop. And maybe 6 months later, he had been listening to me talk about my current shop and how I was not satisfied. And he was like, well, do you want to do a guest spot here and just see how it fits, how it works out? And I did, I think, one weekend guest spot, and then it was like, all right, let's do this. Like, move up here, let's work.
And
But
so
it's
now
pretty good.
you've been there ever since.
Yeah, ever since it'll be 9 years this next month.
And the crew there has been the same crew the whole time. The vibe's good there because a lot of things you hear about pretty frequently in shops is that, I think maybe the thing that artists struggle with most in their shops is just the chemistry between the artists, and that's always a
Yeah.
struggle for people. Do you have that kind of a challenge there, or is it pretty good family vibe?
Um, I mean, it's a little bit of everything, There's kind of what we call the core four, where it's Jeff, Brad, Caitlin, and myself. We've been there the longest. Jeff and Brad were the founders of the shop. They brought Caitlin on probably within a year after that, and then I was the following year. Um, since then, we've had some people come and go, but now we're up to 7 artists, and all 7 of us have been there for several years together. And it works out pretty good, but this is something I hear a lot when we go to shows because our shop kind of travels together pretty hard. And a lot of other tattooers see that and they're like, man, like you said, it's crazy you guys have been together for so long. Like most people move on at a certain point. And I think part of that is that even though we do have times when we bicker or fight or get upset with each other, like we always squash it and move on, and we're all just trying to make each other better, at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I see you guys at shows a lot together, and you guys always have that good kind of chemistry feeling when you're around each other. So
Hmm.
it's inspiring to see, and I'm sure other artists, like you said, really gravitate towards that too and want to learn what that magic formula is all about, right?
Yeah.
Because I hear it a lot, over the years, So I was just reading this. Have you ever seen this book? I actually just picked this book up off of Amazon called Tales of a Tattoo Apprentice. Have you
Oh
ever seen that
no.
one?
Mm-mm.
So it's by this Julio Avila, but he came up, around the same time that Troy Temple came up in the industry, starting tattooing, and they kind of worked together. He's actually the one that told me about the book, so I was reading it. But it's interesting reading, a tattoo apprentice's perspective from the '90s because it was way different back then, and the shop
Oh
culture was
yeah.
way different, and drugs were a prevalent thing, just like the biker scene was huge in tattoo shops, and it's
Hmm.
funny going back and reading all that because that's around the time when I got interested and involved in tattooing was back in the early '90s. So going back and reading other people's stories around that time is a sharp contrast to the world we
Yeah,
live in
it's so
today.
different.
Oh, yeah, and I kind of want to get into that a little bit with you too because you're certainly a younger artist.
Hmm.
And the industry is a lot different today than it was, obviously in the '90s and even in the early 2000s, And so,
Yeah.
how do you feel, especially being a woman, a female tattoo artist
Hmm.
in today's landscape? How do you feel uh, how do you feel amongst your peers, like at conventions? You're tearing it up. You're like winning tons of awards. The spotlight's on you at all the shows you're at. Like I hear your name all the time. You know,
Oh gosh.
how do you feel like not only how do you feel as a female tattoo artist in today's world, but what advice do you give to other female tattoo artists that are coming up or that have been part of the
Yeah.
industry that are your peers? You know, how does that landscape look to you?
It's tough because it definitely is better than it used to be. You know, when I first started, there were plenty of female tattoo artists. There weren't a ton, but you know, at that time there was people with notoriety like Kelly Doty and Teresa Sharp were huge names in the industry already when I started. Um, but at the same time, I heard day in and day out as an apprentice in the first few years tattooing that I'm only busy because I'm a girl. I'm only busy because I have boobs. I'm only, you know, attracting people because of this, and it's not actually for my tattoos or my artwork. So I kind of took it upon myself really early on to ask myself, like, what do I want out of tattooing? What do I want to be my career, my passion? And I kind of came to the conclusion that I just wanted to become undeniable, that it didn't matter what anyone else thought. If they saw my work, it spoke for itself and it was undeniable. Like you could have me lose the contest 20 times in a row, but everyone looking at that tattoo is going to know that it's good and it deserves better, right? So that's kind of why I left my shop and came to Golden Yeti because I knew like, well, I have to continue to keep getting better on my own and make it my mission to improve myself. No one else is going to do it for me. So if I want to become undeniable, I have to put in the work almost in spite of everyone else. And that's kind of just what I've been doing this whole time. So anytime I go to a show now, I I do still notice, unfortunately, some bias because it's just the wording has changed. You know, before it was like, oh, you're only busy because you're a girl. And now it's like, oh, it's almost like there's too many girls tattooing. There's too many of us tattooing. And I don't really understand that because I think that everyone has their own unique skill set and style, and I don't really think that there's a lack of clients. Like we all can tattoo, like I don't know. I do see it unfortunately still at conventions and traveling um women and you know the queer community like they get treated differently than dude tattooers, right? Old heads, guys.
Hmm.
Um they get you know, guys I feel like a lot of times will get accepted into certain groups a little bit easier than like if I was going to walk up to a group of people. Uh but on the flip side, now we kind of have our own groups with women tattooers where, you know, there's whole communities on like Facebook or Instagram where if you want to travel or do guest spots and you're feeling uncomfortable with that prospect, you can reach out to your community and you know, there's it's tough to talk about because there's kind of pros and cons to all of it, but it's just so different from when I started. I don't know.
No, no, it's good to get that perspective because I think it's a thing that a lot of us in the industry reflect on, especially
Hmm.
on this side of the industry as a manufacturer or as a brand owner. You know, you're always trying to look at that landscape and analyze that landscape and make sure
Yeah.
that, you know, because I'm an evolutionary person, you know what I mean? I'm not like the traditional quote unquote old head that's like stuck in
Yeah.
the old ways, you know. I'm like you where I'm always trying to progress and learn new things and just adapt to the evolution of the industry. And not only at
Hmm.
that, but also try to help be a voice in shaping what the future of the industry should look like, right?
Yeah.
Through education and just knowledge sharing and you know all of that stuff. So it's interesting to hear other people's perspective on that, especially when it comes to gender or orientation type items
Hmm.
because I feel like you're spot on with what you said in regards to your art should be undeniable and your art should be the central focus of who Mary Blake is,
Hmm.
not your gender or how you identify or any of that kind of nonsense, right? Like
Yeah.
that doesn't really matter. And so like that's always been a tricky thing for me because when we talk about business stuff, we're always like, oh, we got to make sure we do this or this or that. And I'm like, no, we just got to make sure that we support artists. Like it just needs to be that basic. Like it doesn't even have to
Hmm.
go beyond that. If you're an artist, we love you, we support you, we want to talk to you and get to know you. That's all. It's really all it is. Don't care if you're an artist from the 90s, 2000, or an artist from 2030 that's coming up. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I just want to know what kind of art you're doing and if you're passionate about it and if you truly care about the craft. That's what really matters.
Definitely.
So,
Definitely.
so in regards to education and your constant desire to evolve and learn, where do you feel like you're at on the tattoo, meter on a scale from 1 to 10? How much do you still feel like you need to learn? Where do you feel like your weak areas are at still? Where are you still trying to improve?
I think everyone is always able to improve, you know. I feel like right now I'm at a point where yeah, my tattoos are good and I know people can't say otherwise. But I still feel like there's plenty of room to grow. You know, this industry is competitive, and I do consider myself a competitive tattooer, like talking about conventions and stuff. Um, and part of that is just adapting your style. You know, I spent probably the first 8 years of my career, 9 years of my career pursuing black and gray realism. I told everyone I wanted to be the black and gray tattoo artist. I wanted to do that smooth black and gray like you see in California and shit. But that wasn't really doable out here because everyone does black and gray out here. It's really big in Tennessee's traditional and black and gray realism. And so I took it upon myself, like, well, I need to deviate my style to something else so that I can keep growing. And so I started doing color realism in probably the fall of like 2022. Um, and just kind of kept going from there. And it's funny to see now because I feel like I've been doing color realism for several years and I'm already like, okay, what's the next thing I'm gonna try and do? Recently I've kind of been doing these realistic caricature bobblehead kind of tattoos with other artists as collabs, and that's been a lot of fun. But yeah, I think I just have to keep chasing that thing, you know, keep evolving and moving through styles. I know a lot of artists that started with one style and ended up with another style, and that second or third or fourth style that they started doing is what really took them to the next level, right? So I'm just chasing that right now.
Yeah, yeah. So when you first started tattooing, what was the shop vibe like? Was it like custom only? Was it like a mix of custom appointment only stuff and walk in? What kind of work were you mostly doing in the beginning? I know you said black and gray was a heavy
Hmm.
focus of yours early on, but specific to like, styles of tattooing, were you just doing, little bangers? Were you taking on bigger projects? What was that like for you in the very beginning?
The shop that I started at was a street shop, like to the core. You know, we have a lot of factories down here, so every Friday they'd get paid and we'd have people coming in getting like little bangers. Yeah, for the longest time, I didn't book out past 2 weeks, right? Because it was just so walk-in based, like spur of the moment tattoo decisions. So a lot of the time it was just that small stuff. I'm sure you remember like infinity signs with the feather in it and the dandelion with the bird silhouettes, the anchors. All that was really hot when I was an apprentice. So I did a lot of those. But unfortunately, my mentor, who was what was supposed to be my mentor when I started tattooing at the shop, left for about 6 or 8 months that first year. And everyone else at the shop was basically like, well, we didn't sign up to have an apprentice. So, we're not going to teach you anything. Like, you can watch us, but we're not going to go out of our way to show you anything. So I ended up just doing a couple of like trial tattoos when I very first started. And then the shop owner was like, all right, these are good enough. You're going to start taking walk-ins. And I just started tattooing regular people, charging, shop minimum for years. And part of why I started doing realism was because I could not do a clean line to save my life. I had the worst line work for probably 2 years, yeah. Just because no one told me how to pull a clean line, and I just could not figure it out on my own for some reason. So I was like, well, fuck it. I do realism in my traditional artwork, like charcoal and pencil and stuff. So I'm just gonna transition that I already know how to do to black and gray realism. Because there's no line work in realism was kind of my thinking. So I just took off from there. But it was really tough not having anyone tell me how to do anything and just kind of figuring it out on my own. Like I would print out pictures from Instagram because this is also early Instagram days, where you're stoked to get 10 likes on a picture of your tattoo.
Sure.
I'd print out pictures of other people's tattoos and like zoom in on them and be like, how did they get this texture and this feather? Or how did they do this or that? And try and break down what other people were doing because no one at the shop that I was at was really teaching me. But yeah, so I was begging people to get cool stuff because I was overdoing the infinity signs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. How did you find the transition from black and gray to color to be? Was that a pretty smooth transition, or did you struggle with that in the beginning a little bit?
Um, I think it was mostly like self-doubt in the beginning. I still feel like I struggle picking my color palette, but I will tell people all the time, like especially black and gray artists, if they want to start doing color, it's going to be an easier transition than a color artist going to black and gray. Because when you do black and gray for so long, you get contrast and like a tonal range, all your values just drilled into your head. So when you start doing color, it doesn't really matter so much the specific colors that you're picking out as long as the contrast is correct and your values are correct. That's why I do a lot of I call it anything but skin tone portraits. Like I'll use oranges and purples and blues and anything but like a basic skin tone range. Just because it makes it more dynamic, but also as long as you have the contrast there, it's going to look realistic, even if the colors are kind of fantasy.
Right, right. So I did a little bit of I tried to do some little bit of deeper recon this past weekend in preparation for our talk today. I was trying to figure out what's the most viral tattoo that Mary Blake's ever done, right? And that Lady
Yeah,
Gaga portrait came up, right? And I don't know if that's like the most popular
it's probably
tattoo
one
that you've
of,
done,
yeah.
but that's the one that kept coming up. And I actually found it on Reddit, and which is weird because I never look at Reddit. You know
Oh,
what I
that's cool. I don't either. Yeah, that's
mean?
cool. I didn't know it was on Reddit.
Yeah, it's on Reddit. It doesn't have it's got 308 up shares, and then it's got, a few dozen comments on it. But it's pretty cool. It's a very dynamic piece. Where did you do that tattoo, and when did you do that one?
Oh, I did it at the shop in Franklin probably just a few months ago, like earlier this year, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's too old.
Yeah. So
Um,
it's a cool piece. The contrast is definitely popping on that piece. I'm looking at it now. When I publish a video, I'll
hmm
put a picture of it up so people can see it on the YouTube channel. But what is your most, I guess, two-part question.
hmm
What's your favorite tattoo you've done? And then also, what is your most viral tattoo that you've done?
well, I think they're actually the same answer, honestly. Anytime I do pop culture references, So like I have the Lady Gaga tattoo. I also last year did a Megan the Stallion dressed up as Sailor Moon, and that went pretty big too. Um, so I think it's just I enjoy pop culture references and portraits of like celebrities or musicians or characters from movies. And I think those are the ones that people respond to the most. This past weekend or the weekend before, I was at the Indie Tattoo Expo
Hmm.
and I did an Ace Ventura tattoo, right? So it might not have been the biggest tattoo that was there, but everyone that saw it had such a positive response because they recognized who it was and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing," you know? And I think those are the tattoos that do the best are the ones that get those positive responses from people, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you took some awards down at that show.
Yes, I did.
You took best of show.
Yeah, me and Thomas Hunt. So that was my second year in a row. I was pretty stoked on that.
Yeah,
It
you're
was
killing
cool.
it.
Oh, trying to,
Uh,
it's hard.
Yeah, how many awards have you won now total? Do you know?
Gosh, I do not know. I have a list on my phone. I keep track of it just because our shop, there's several of us that competitively tattoo, so we have a lot of awards at the shop, and so I have a list on my phone just so I know which ones are mine. Um, but I don't think I've actually counted how many there are.
Do you remember what was your most meaningful win at a show?
Um, Probably my very first best of show. Uh, that was at Space City a few years ago. I did a collab on the husband of my high school best friend,
Okay.
and we won best of show. It's the first time I tattooed with this guy, Stephen Monet.
Ah, I love
And
Monet.
yeah, he's great. And, it was just kind of like a really long weekend. We were both dying because our client was dying. We did a whole chest piece on him in one sitting, one day, and begged him to stay till Sunday to enter best of show. He wanted to go home, and I was like, "Look, I will drive you home myself if you will stay." And we ended up winning, and it was amazing. I cried, Steven cried, everyone cried. It was
How did the
good.
client feel about winning that, knowing his
Oh,
tattoo
stoked.
won?
Yeah, he was glad to have stayed. It
Yeah,
was worth it. Um, I think he was just kind of in shock after the first day because it was like 12 hours for a chess piece basically by two artists, and we were tattooing at the same time for most of it. So if anyone knows that it was tough. It was tough for sure.
so
But
you're doing one half and Monet's on the other half.
yeah, and then we would swap. So we
Okay,
kind of had pieces here and there that each of us worked on, but yeah, it was nuts. That was what my first really big collab too.
really.
Um,
How
mhm.
did you link up with Monet? Was he just an artist that you had been following and watching and that you were inspired by, or did you meet him at a show? Or
Yeah, I had actually met him at Hell City the previous year. I wasn't tattooing that year, I was just attending, and he was free and I knew of his work, and I knew that he was going to be tattooing my coworker on I think Sunday or Saturday at Hell City, and this was the day before that, and I had my hand open, so I went up to him and I was like, "Hey, do you want to tattoo my hand?" And at first he was like, no. And I was like, okay, I mean, it's cool if you don't, but I'm here and I would love to get a tattoo from you. And so he went through his drawings that he already had, his pre-drawings, and he had this flower that was literally like hand shaped. And so I was like, come on, we got to do it. And then I ended up going on stage for Best of Day, and we got really close. And I think that sort of got him excited about the whole idea. And ever since then, we just sort of kept in touch on Instagram. So when Space City came around, we were like, let's do this. Let's do a collab. And I found the client. We figured it out. And we've done several collabs since then because we just work well together, our styles. But yeah, it's fun. I love doing collabs.
yeah, yeah. So, what's been your favorite show to do so far?
Um, I will always say Hell City, Due South's a really fun one too. They didn't have one this year, but Due South and Hell City are kind of right there for me.
What do you like the most about those shows over other shows? What's the draw?
I think it it's a lot of different things. I think my main thing when I go to shows is just to have a good time and enjoy the weekend. I don't want to leave home and leave my son and travel to some place where I'm gonna be miserable and hate it the whole time. Sitting in my hotel room like sad, right? I want to go to a show where I'm not only surrounded by like the best tattooers, but also just like-minded people that we're all kind of in the same place and we all understand where we're at some like base level, right? And then, everyone enjoys each other's company. We all hang out like before, during, and after the show. You do a lot of networking like that, but that's my favorite kind of show. I really don't like going back to the hotel after a convention and just sitting there like, oh, I wish I was home, you know?
Right, right.
That's not a good show.
Yeah, yeah. What are there shows out there that you haven't done yet that you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, there's always shows that I want to do. I haven't done a lot of like the big shows. I know a lot of people talk about what is it, Philly
Yeah,
is like the
Philly.
largest one. I haven't done that one. I
You've
I
done
would
Chicago,
Yeah, Chicago is huge.
and
Yeah.
that could be bigger than Philly by now. I don't it's if it's not bigger, it's like right there, same
It's
size as
close,
Philly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my calves were burning at that show.
Yeah, it's a big layout.
Yeah, but
Have
I'd love
you
to do some international ones. I've only done one international show and I'd like to do more.
which one did you do?
I did Evian a few years ago.
Okay. That's a
Yeah.
good show.
Yeah, yeah, it was fun. We made a whole trip of it. That was probably the best part was just the traveling because I think now I'm at a point where I kind of pick conventions based on the location as well. I don't necessarily want to work a show in a city that I don't really care to go to. Unless it's just an awesome show with all my friends, but for the most part, I kind of pick shows based on not only the show but the location, if I want to go there, if I want to see it, because you have to spend time and money traveling too, and you're going to be out there, so you might as well make it a place that you want to be at.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I remember doing shows way back, and one of my biggest regrets when I was traveling was that I never, took that extra time to actually enjoy the place where I was at. It was like
Oh,
show
you
up
have
on a
to.
show up on a Thursday, work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, load
Hmm.
out on a Monday, and you're just in a convention center the whole entire time.
I know, it's the worst.
Yeah, yeah. So it's good that you're doing that. That's good advice for artists that are traveling or thinking about doing conventions. I absolutely set a day or two aside, before or after the show to actually
Hmm.
go out and enjoy the place where you're at. Because most of the conventions are in cool places, like big
Yeah,
cities with
definitely.
cool stuff.
Yeah, like specifically, we have Hell City Phoenix coming up here in a couple months. And last year, I went out early and stayed late. Like, I went out on a Wednesday and we didn't leave until Tuesday. And it was awesome. It was so much fun because you kind of have, like, specifically, Hell City Phoenix is at a resort, right? It's at the Biltmore, the Arizona Biltmore. And so it'd be such a waste if you just went like come in Thursday, leave on Monday, and you're just tattooing the whole time. Like, you want to have that time to just be somewhere and take it all in. So we drive around the desert, you see the red rocks, you take a hike, you do things like that. Makes it more enjoyable.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if you were gonna do Phoenix, so you
Oh yeah,
answered the question. Yeah.
definitely, definitely. That's one of the ones that you just don't miss. I love Phoenix.
Yeah. Do you do the big pool party? Are you get in the pool with everybody? That's a big
Yeah.
networking opportunity.
Oh yeah. I love the pool parties. It's so wild at Phoenix, but it really, you kind of just have to accept that there's gonna be people there with fresh tattoos and just sort of let it go. Because
Yeah,
if you worry about it too much, you won't get in the pool.
yeah, you just hope it's not your client.
Yeah, yeah. Now the hot tub, I don't get in the hot tub. That's a whole different.
Never get in a hot tub at a resort,
Never.
regardless. That's a rule.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So do you have desire to kind of venture into any other styles that you haven't tried yet, or are you like comfortable where you're at, or you're just kind of I'll take whatever comes my way?
Yeah, I think right now I'm sort of playing with this realistic new school, not quite to the extent of like say Nick Mitchell does what I would consider realistic new school. Um, a little bit more realistic than that, but still exaggerated proportions like these bobbleheads. I'm really liking that. And then I also have been kind of playing with a little bit of like realistic Japanese stuff like
Ooh.
that. So just trying to figure out how I can sort of move through these styles. And I wouldn't say that it's like creating a new style because this is something that I've seen other people do before, but I'm just trying to figure out what I like when I see a tattoo that I've done and I'm like, yeah, I nailed that, or that's what I want my shit to look like, right?
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
interested in your Japanese stuff because Japanese is my favorite style. So
Yeah.
I would love to hear some of that. Um, so you've got a lot of tattoos, clearly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What is your favorite tattoo on your body?
Oh gosh. Um, I I have so many different ones. I probably one of my most favorite is I have do you know the Emperor's New Groove?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have Kuzco, the llama, on me, but he's dressed up as Sailor Moon, so I call him Sailor Kuzco. That's one of my favorites for sure. Yeah.
So you like Sailor Moon apparently.
Yeah, yeah. I also have Tina Belcher from Bob's Burgers
Okay.
twerking on my leg. Yeah.
Okay.
I have some fun tattoos. I like those.
Yeah. Yeah. Who's your how many different artists have tattooed you?
Oh gosh. I'm not even sure because I get so many little bangers from buddies just over the years, like gosh, over 20 people maybe.
Yeah, well, you said in the beginning you were getting tattooed a lot at Golden Yeti.
Mm-hmm.
How many tattoos did you get there in the beginning?
Um,
Or
I
how
s-
far did you get into your
yeah.
because you pretty much have a bodysuit now. Like you're pretty well
Yeah, for the most
covered.
part, yeah.
Yeah.
So when I started there, um, I was married to my first husband who was kind of against me getting tattooed, which is part of why it didn't work out because obviously I'm a tattoo artist, I'm gonna get tattooed. So once we divorced, I kind of just took off and was like, I'm gonna get my neck tattooed and my face and my hands, and I'm gonna do whatever I want to do. So Jeff had been working on my back, and after that, I quickly was like, okay, yeah, hands, neck. I started my torso piece. My legs were just getting filled up with like, palm or hand sized bangers from friends of mine. And it all just kind of, in just a span of a few years, I was pretty covered. Yeah.
Wow. So your back piece, was that like how many tattoos did you have before you got into that big back piece?
Um, I had had kind of like a half sleeve, forearm piece. I had a big piece on my thigh, just sort of random things here and there. But it's funny because we started my back piece, and then once I started working at the shop, we kind of quit working on my back piece because it was like, oh, you're not a client, you're a homie. Like we'll tattoo you when we can, which was never. So then I just had an in progress back piece for the longest time, mostly just an outline with like a little bit of background. And that's when I started getting all the other pieces worked on, like my torso and my legs. And Brad started doing big cover-ups on my arms. And it really wasn't until a couple years ago when Jeff and I were like, we need to finish this back. Like, let's do it. So we ended up doing weekly sessions for about 6 months. Every Thursday, I would get my back piece worked on, like a different portion of my back. Uh, I don't recommend that. I was so tired by the end of it. I was like, please, I just don't want to be healing a tattoo anymore. But it really, knocked out the whole piece and brought it all together to where it is now. But oh man, it was a
I
chore.
Yeah, I feel if my memory's right, which it very well might not be. I think the first time you and I actually met in any kind of like for length of time was at the Cyan show in Ohio,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right?
definitely.
My memory's right with that, right?
Yeah.
But if I'm correct even further, I feel like Jeff was working on your back at that show.
Yeah, so he was working on so my back piece goes from my neck to my knees basically. So he was working on the back of my thigh, but we had been entering my back piece that weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's when I met you and the whole crew there at the show. You guys
Mm-hmm.
were booth right across from us, and that's kind of where our magic journey started.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun.
It was fun. Yeah, that was a fun show.
Yeah, so at that point in time, had you already been pretty seasoned in the convention circuit? Were you just kind of getting started at that point? Like,
No, honestly, I didn't start really doing conventions until um 2021 or maybe even later. I had done a couple here and there, and then I got pregnant in 2020 and had my son, so we took off, of course, some time, and I didn't really start getting back into conventions until 2021. So I've just kind of been doing it really competitively for the past 5 years, 4 or 5 years.
yeah, that's great. That's great. So let's talk a little bit about the your personal experiences in the industry related to like interactions with different tattoo brands, like, and I'm not
Hmm.
trying to get anything specific out of you other than your true feelings about like how do you feel about sponsorships in the industry and just like all the massive like gosh, there's 100 different cartridge brands, there's like
Yeah.
a million different aftercare products, there's like just so much shit that's constantly getting shoved in your face all the time.
Hmm.
How do you feel about that? How do you how do you feel like your relationships are with the brands that you're associated with? And as a young artist, do you feel like that's been a help to your career? Do you feel like it's like I think a lot of people think those things are exploitive in some ways, but how do
Hmm.
you feel about that whole part of the industry as an artist?
Um, it's interesting because, like you said, there are so many brands that just pop up out of nowhere. I get messages all the time like, "Hey, do you want a sponsor for supplies?" And it's clearly like a bot, right? And I've even had some younger tattooers message me and be like, "Have you heard of this company or do you know what this is?" And I always tell them like a good rule of thumb is if they're saying that they're gonna sponsor you for like a 20% discount on supplies, that's not really a sponsorship. You're just giving them free advertising and using their products that probably aren't that good, or else they would be able to sell them on their own and you would have heard of them, right? Um, I think that's why kind of even though there's so many different brands out there, people still really gravitate towards the bigger players, just because they know if if they follow an artist that they respect and that artist is posting about something, that kind of has some weight to it, right? So like I really notice when I see artists that I respect posting about brands, or whether it's good or bad, like sometimes I'll see an artist post and be like, yo, these needles are dog shit. And then I'm like, all right, I believe them. If they say they're bad, they must be bad, right? But what I really like, and this isn't to blow smoke up your ass, because I love you guys regardless, but I just like that you guys actually talk to me, not only when it's about business, but you guys are genuinely interested in my life and what I'm doing, and I feel like we have a real relationship, like me and you and Andy and Adrian, everyone. I I don't have many sponsorships. It's really just you guys and technically like ink maps. Um and ink maps is a great tool for artists, I'll say that, but I don't really like talk to the guy that made it, it just kind of exists and is a thing. But you guys, like I reach out to you guys all the time. And we talk on Instagram all the time, or we'll text, and I think that matters. And I feel like other artists that I've spoken to that have good relationships with the companies that they're sponsored by, it has a lot more weight. Like I said, it means more to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a big part of what you mentioned is in regards to like just the contact that you have. I think a lot of what really matters in the landscape is artist owned companies versus non-artist owned companies, right? And like
Mm-hmm.
without mentioning names, like I see because I'm always paying attention to what's happening out there, and I'm a marketing person, by nature. I mean, like I've been an artist my whole life too, and my history goes back to, I originally was in high school thinking I was going to come out of high school and college being a commercial artist and an advertising
Mm-hmm.
major and designing magazine ads and things like that. That's what I really wanted to do. But I hated I would submit my drawings to my professor or my instructors, and they would be like, "Oh no, you got to change this. You got to change this. This isn't good. This doesn't look right. This isn't a good
Mm-hmm.
flow." But I would be in love with the piece of art that I created, and then I'd feel like shit because they just tore my shit apart. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then by the time you go back and revise that artwork 4 or 5 times, you're just like, this isn't even my artwork anymore. You know what I mean? And like,
Mm-hmm.
this doesn't feel good to create this. So then I was like, fuck this. I don't want to do this, you know? But it's funny
Yeah.
because tattooing is the same way in a lot of ways. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I was just about to say that that's funny because it's like when I started working at Golden Yeti, was before that I did whatever the client asked for, and I hated it. Oh, I hated it so much because a lot of times I felt like as an artist we have a certain eye, and like we kind of just know when things are gonna work or not work. And then I started at Golden Yeti, and they told me, you can tell your clients no. Like you can tell them no and move on. Like you don't have to do everything that they ask you. And that's kind of what I had been taught at the first shop, was like if you don't do the tattoo, they're gonna leave and go get it done somewhere else. So you better do it, right?
Right.
And that really changed like how I tattoo and the style of work that I was doing when I started kind of taking the reins a little bit more.
Yeah.
It's true, yeah.
Yeah. But so the point, what I was trying to make was that I think a big struggle is, and what artists should be really focused on in their relationships with these companies is, number one, is it an artist-owned company? Do they really
Mm-hmm.
understand the craft of tattooing? Do they really understand the products that they're pushing to people? Or are they just out here trying to make a fast buck off
Yeah.
of your notoriety, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the number one thing that you have to look at if you're getting approached by uh, companies that are offering you a sponsorship. And like you said, great, if they want to give you a 20% off, then you should certainly take that. But you should also be conscious of what you're giving them for that, because
Mm-hmm.
that's a cookie cutter approach, and they're basically offering that to anybody that will take it. So it's not
Yeah.
it's not a signal that you're special to them. It's just, hey, we can give them 20% off and they'll promote for us. And by the way,
Mm-hmm.
100 other artists will do the same thing for us. It was funny because I was talking to another artist a couple weeks ago at a show, and And he said, he's like, I was sponsored by this XYZ company. And the one thing that I fucking hated was that one of the owners came up to me at a convention one time and offered me a sponsorship. And I was already sponsored by them. And I was like, what
Oh
the fuck? You
no.
don't even know that I'm sponsored by you already? Like,
That's bad. Yeah.
exactly. So it's like, I think there's a lot of merit to what you're saying about having those personal relationships. And certainly with us, we always just like, we don't just go out and like look for people that have a million followers. That's not really what
Mm-hmm.
attracts us. What attracts us is our dialogue and our chemistry with an artist. Do we mesh well? Do we have good chemistry between us? Are we just, do we have that family vibe? Because that's what we're looking for. You know what I mean? And like
Mm-hmm.
the rest is just secondary stuff to us. It's like we want to be able to be like, hey, Mary, you're going to be at Hell City, Phoenix. Awesome. Let's hang out, after the show. Let's
Mm-hmm.
go get a bite to eat and let's go bowling or let's go to an art museum or let's just fucking go hang out and do some fun shit. You know what I mean? Like
Definitely. Yeah.
that's where it's at. So like I don't think a lot of companies really put that much interest in the relationships that they have with people.
Mm-hmm.
But that's been the biggest part of I guess that's been my biggest takeaway from owning Electrum is the fact that I get to form these long-lasting friendships with people. And even if they weren't sponsored people, I would still want to be friends. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just dig the shit out of the people that are associated with us. And I mean, we talk all the time anyways. We're always talking. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it's
I
good.
know. I feel like having that relationship too, it makes the endorsement a lot more genuine. Like when I talk about Electrum with other artists, which I do all the time, it's because I mean, I genuinely feel what I'm saying, but then I also am like, look, I know these people. Like I know this company, I know this product, I know these people, and like I 100% back it up, right? I've had companies contact me where we've kind of talked about stuff and then they end up just disappearing. And then it's like, okay, well, I'm glad this didn't actually work out because clearly you guys don't care because you just are gone, right? Or
Right.
you make it sound like, oh, we're 100% supportive of you and your work, and then poof, nothing.
Yeah. Sponsorships are something that we've always struggled with and just like because like how do you don't want to seem you don't want to you gotta it's like a necessary evil, you know what I mean? Like you
Mm-hmm.
gotta you gotta have those relationships and you gotta have those artist endorsements, but also you don't want to be fake in it, you know what I mean? Like you don't
Yeah.
it's like you said, I don't want to just be able to be like, oh, I'll give you 20%, and by the way, I need you to make XYZ content for me, and you need to do 5 shows a year, and you need to work in our booth, and you need to all these strings
Yeah.
attached to that 20% off bullshit, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like I don't even like asking people for stuff really, but it's like I think like how is this supposed to work, and trying to figure out what the right answer is to that is a real struggle, you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
how do you make it fair to both sides of the equation, you know what I mean? And just keep it like just on the level playing field where you're not like bullshitting each other and like it's just a mutually beneficial relationship. The business of tattooing is brought to you by Electrum Supply, the industry leader in high quality tattoo supplies designed by artists for artists. Whether you need premium stencil products, top tier cartridges, or game changing aftercare, Electrum has you covered with innovative, artist tested solutions you can trust. Want to elevate your work? Head over to electrumsupply.com and stock up on the best gear in the business. And because you're a listener of the business of tattooing, use code podcast10 at checkout for 10% off your next order. Stay sharp, stay stocked, and stay ahead with Electrum Supply.
Definitely. Definitely.
But enough of that talk. What are your interests outside of tattooing? What kinds of I mean, I know some of it, but for the people listening, like what are your I mean, you have a 4-year-old, so that's obviously a big life
Yeah.
project and passion.
Yeah, honestly, he takes up most of my time, but other than spending time with him, I consider myself a collector of hobbies. I like to try everything, even just once, you know. So I've got a craft room where there's just boxes of like all different kinds of mediums for like traditional art, you know. I have oil paint, acrylic, I have pastels, but then I also have yarn because I like to crochet and knit, and I have fabric because I like to sew, and I have clay so that I can, you know, sculpt things, and I kind of like to do a little bit of everything just to try new things, keep myself busy. But then I also feel like kind of the same way with tattooing, all this stuff that you learn outside of tattooing, like everything kind of builds upon itself, you know, the styles and skill sets that one thing takes might inspire you to try something new in another medium. Um, and it's sort of how I approach my tattooing now is because I got more into painting in the past few years than I have been before. Previously, I was mostly just doing charcoal and graphite and kind of those types of mediums. And once I started doing color tattoos, I was like, okay, well, I need to start painting in color and training my eye to kind of see things better. And now when I'm tattooing, I approach it the same way I approach a painting, which is like big brush to small brush, you know, I almost always will mag an entire piece in, and then I'll go back with a liner or something smaller to kind of tighten it up and add those little details. So it's the same with paintings. I'll
Right,
big brush everything in, and then only once it's all blocked in will I start detailing something out.
right, right. Yeah, that's cool. So how many hours a week do you spend on average tattooing?
Oh gosh. I guess it just depends. I recently started taking a little bit more time off because I was working like 6 days a week, 7 days a week sometimes. Um my son's in daycare Monday through Friday, so I'm kind of limited to the hours that I can work during the week. So I end up working every day to make up for the shorter days. So sometimes, you know, it'll be only 4 hours Monday through Friday, and then I'll have a day or two on the weekend where I'm working like 8 hours, right? So it kind of varies,
So it
but
looks like you're in a paint room right now.
yeah, yeah, this is my little
Yeah.
studio right
Yeah, I'm
now.
checking out the piece over your shoulder there. Is that finished or is that a work in progress?
Oh, this is actually one that my boyfriend did,
Okay.
David Hirschman. Yeah, so he moved in not that long ago and he's a fantastic oil painter. And so now I'm just like soaking up all of his knowledge on painting. But yeah, it's a work in progress still.
Yeah, it looks really cool. I like that.
Thanks.
What's the one
Yeah.
over here on the wall?
This one?
Yeah, what is that one? Is that
Oh
yours?
gosh. Yeah, this is one that I started in 2020. I don't even know if I can lift it up. It's a big one. It was like a sort of a Rock of Ages kind of inspired thing, but it's the monolith. Like you remember when that came in the desert?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Is that acrylic?
yes, yeah, it's acrylic,
So
but it's not done.
I like to talk painting because I love painting.
Yeah.
Do you now you're starting to dabble in oil a little bit?
Yeah, I think I like acrylic so much just because it dries so quickly, and
Yeah,
that's just kind of I tattoo very quickly as well, and so I like it better because if I mess something up, I wait like 10 seconds and it's dry and I can just go over it and fix it, right? But oil painting has always kind of been a struggle for me because of the slow dry times. So I'm trying to open my mind and learn. I actually built a drying box, and that's helped a little bit. So I can pop oil painting into the box, and it has a heater in there, so it'll like dry it out faster, and I can start painting on it again in a few hours or whatever. But
yeah.
man, it's so frustrating how wet they are. Like fucking week later,
I
I
know. I know I'm with
swear.
you. I can't stand oil paint personally myself. I have a deep respect for people that use oils because they can do some amazing things with oil paint.
Yeah.
But I'm with you, man. I don't have the patience for that shit. I'd much rather use acrylic.
Yeah.
Have you dabbled with airbrush at all?
No, I've always wanted to because I see some pretty amazing artists on Instagram using it, and I love the effects that you can get. Like I really like kind of the glowy neon or like kind of the ambiance, that you can get in an airbrush piece, but I've just never pulled the trigger on getting it.
Yeah, I did. I linked up with a local artist here several years ago that I really admired her work, and she's a painter. And I signed up with her, and I was going to her place like I don't remember, maybe it was like every Tuesday, every week, every night. And we would just put on music, and she was teaching me how to airbrush and stuff, and I fell in love with it then, you know. So like now
That's
I use
cool.
acrylics just to block in, like what you
Mm-hmm.
say. I do all my heavy blocking with my acrylic paints, but now I do all my fine tuning with the airbrush. So it's like totally.
Oh, I'll have to get one and try it out.
And in the Indie Tattoo Expo, when we were just there, I was talking to
Mm-hmm.
Junior Purvis, and he had this big Jimi Hendrix painting in his booth. I don't know if you saw it there or not.
Yeah, yeah, I did.
And I was like, dude, that freaking painting's sick. And he's like, yeah, I did that all with an airbrush and tattoo ink. And I was like, what? He's like, I was
That's
like, you've been running
cool.
tattoo ink through your airbrush? And he's like, yeah, dude, totally can do it. And I was like, well, how much do you got to
Hmm.
dilute it? Blah, blah. He's like, you don't have to dilute it at all. So now I'm like, well, shit, I got a
Wow.
ton of expired tattoo inks at the shop.
Right.
I'm gonna bring that shit home and start fucking around with some of that and seeing how that works. That got me excited.
I never would have thought of that. I mean, I guess I've heard people painting with tattoo inks, but yeah, running it through an airbrush, that's
I would have never
interesting.
thought to do that because
Yeah.
airbrushes are so like they're just so finicky and they're so hard to clean
Yeah.
already. It's like, ooh, I don't want to put tattoo ink through there. That would kind of fuck my shit up.
Right.
But after he said it, he was like, "Oh no, it's no problem. Just freaking do it." And I was like, "Okay, all right, I'm gonna give that a shot." You know.
No, that's
So,
awesome.
but you should try airbrushing. I think you'd like it.
Yeah, yeah, I'll have to try it out. I just well, you have to get like an air compressor too, right? Like,
Yeah, you just have these little ones. Like the one that I
mm-hmm.
have is probably like, I mean, it's just really, really small pancake compressor,
Okay.
and it's super quiet. So you just I sit it down under my easel, and it just kind of, it's got like this little
Hmm.
whispery kind of purr to it.
Mm-hmm.
And the airbrush doesn't use a lot of air, so usually once it fills up, it stays good for a while. It's not like it's where it's constantly cycling,
Yeah.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good if you put music on, you really don't even hear it.
Oh, yeah. I'll definitely have to look into it then.
Yeah, yeah, I do
That's
it,
cool.
and then I learned a lot of tricks from her, but as far as like getting the fumes out of the room and all this stuff, so you're not
Mm-hmm.
breathing all that stuff in, and but it's fun. I spend like hours on YouTube watching painting videos and other people doing different stuff with just different kinds of painting styles, and
Yeah.
but the thing that I struggle with, Mary, is procrastination. It's like
Oh my
I
God,
have a
yeah.
million ideas, and it's like how do I ever have? That's why I asked how much time you spend tattooing, because it's like that was leading up to the question, do you struggle
Yeah.
with other projects because do you have an
A hundred
imbalance in your
percent.
time? You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah. I feel like procrastination's my biggest thing. I actually always recommend this book to people. So if you haven't read it, you should, but it's called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield.
Okay.
And he talks a lot about resistance in it, and like procrastination's a form of resistance, like the things that hold you back. It's kind of like that cheesy thing that you read on the internet where it's like, um why wait for tomorrow to start something when you can start it right now? Like you don't have to be ready for change, you just have to change. And so like what I do for a long time, I just created a schedule for myself where I was like, okay, my son goes to bed at 8:30, so from 9 p.m. to midnight, which is typically when I would go to bed at the time, I'm either painting or drawing or working on something for a tattoo. It doesn't have to be like a crazy huge painting or a really big project, I could just be sketching in a sketchbook, but just to have your hand moving in some way. And that kind of helped me break through a little bit of a rut that I was in, just having that schedule. And now it's funny, I don't really do paintings to like sell them. I do paintings for my friends more than anything. And so I'll be like, okay, um, Maddie, I'm gonna do this painting for you. I'm gonna have it ready by this convention next time I see you. And then I'm like, oh shit. I told someone that I'm doing a painting for them, so I have to do it, right?
Yeah,
So
now you're
that's kind of how
committed.
I like hold myself accountable is like I told someone about it. That means like it's out there in the universe. I have to do it now.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's really tough. It's really tough. I definitely wait until the last minute a lot of times. But I think part of that is just like, it's tough when you're tattooing full time to come home and want to keep creating more art after you feel like you just spent all day working on art. It's just, yeah, it's just a different form, but it's still draining in the same way.
What do you feel like art does for you personally? Like, how do you feel like art, I don't want to say like feeds your soul, but what do you think art provides for you in your life? Like from a mental standpoint, I guess, from a,
Yeah. It's it's not something that like I don't think I'm one of those people where they're like, "Oh, I have to do a painting. Like I have to get it out and I have to get this thing off my chest and do it." For me, it's almost more like the process is what fulfills me because like when I start a painting, and I'm sure you and everyone knows what I'm talking about, you have to really fight through the ugly stages where you want to quit or you want to start over or give up because you're like, this is so bad. How could it possibly get better? Right?
right,
And I kind of force myself to get through that to get to the finish. And then I'm like, oh, okay. So I can paint a little bit. I know kind of what I'm doing. And it's almost like a exercise in building confidence in your instincts and just your natural skills that you're developing. Um, because I think for me, when I do paintings, I'm not really, or at least not at this point, I'm not setting out to like necessarily get something off my chest like some people do. Right now it's kind of just like I'm doing paintings that make me feel good when I look at them and stuff that I just enjoy seeing and working through or trying to figure something out. Like that's kind of like problem solving is what really fulfills me. And so when I'm working on a painting and it gets to the ugly phase and I'm like, all right, how do I get through this? That's what gets me going.
like solving the puzzle, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So, we talked a little bit about the industry versus when you started versus now, but what do you think's been the biggest change in the industry? Because to me, the industry is evolving faster and faster and faster and faster on a lot of different
Mm-hmm.
subject matters, right?
Yeah.
What if you're focused on things outside of just the tattoo that you're working on at any given time, and you're focused on the bigger picture of the tattoo industry, what do you feel like has been the biggest change since you started tattooing?
Um, Honestly, like I think social media plays such a big role in it because in the beginning when I first started, Instagram was still really new and so it was very much just like a digital portfolio, right? Um, and now it's no longer clients are picking artists based on the art, right? They're a lot of times picking artists based on the artist, their personality, their presence on social media. And so I feel like there's kind of, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, this rise of like the ignorant style of tattooing. Um, when the lockdown happened, a lot of people started tattooing out of their house and kind of created this weird style where it's traditionally not considered a good tattoo. Um, but there's a lot of these trends that are kind of coming up where it's like traditionally not good tattoos are trendy. Um, and so there's these artists that are that's their whole thing, and it's like clients are now viewing Instagram and your feed, and they're not just looking at your work, because at this point there's so many good tattooers out there. There's tons of really good tattooers that all do the same style or whatever. So clients are kind of in control when it comes to like picking what artists they want to tattoo them. And I think that's one of the biggest things that's changed is just like I don't really enjoy that side of content creation. I feel like for me, if I was to start doing that, it would kind of come off disingenuous just because, it doesn't really make me feel good dancing in front of the camera to get views, right?
Right, right.
But some artists, that's like it's their thing. They enjoy it. You can tell that they enjoy it, and so I think there's clients for everyone. And my clients aren't necessarily looking for me to be doing that, so I don't have to worry about it. But it's totally different, yeah, than when I started. I never even had to think about posting on Instagram back in the day, you know? I just did a tattoo and that was enough to do a good tattoo, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it's changed a lot.
Have you had any magazine features? I mean, I know magazines probably aren't like something that you probably even really see too much
No.
anymore, but like,
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I definitely want to, at some point, but I think like you said, magazines and just print media has kind of phased out so much that, I remember when I first started tattooing, there was that list going around, the like master list of all the tattoo magazines in the world and the contact information for all the people there, and you could buy it, or I bootlegged that shit off the internet, but um I was sending pictures that had no business being in a magazine to all these magazines just trying to get in, right? And then it just disappeared. Like magazines just kind of went away. And I was like, oh, well, I guess that's just not going to happen now. I don't know.
yeah,
There's so few left that are in print.
yeah.
And
There's only a couple that I know of for sure.
yeah. And then I get a lot of times the emails from people that it's like, you know, be featured in our magazine, but you have to purchase like 10 copies of the magazine at like $15 a piece. And so it's like, oh, cool. So I have to order $150 worth of magazines to be in it. But if you don't order it, you're not going to be in it. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah,
get that a lot. And so it's kind of like put me off to magazines a little bit. I don't
sure,
know.
sure. Still cool to get your tattoos in a print magazine, I feel like,
Oh yeah, I mean, I
regardless.
definitely want to, because that's, when you're looking to travel internationally and like getting work visas and stuff, being a published artist is one of the big things that helps you. So in any type of publication is good.
Where do you want to go internationally? What shows do you have on your radar?
I've been talking to one in Ireland, the Innis Tattoo Convention in Ireland next April. I really would like to do Amsterdam. I was supposed to do it this year, and then I ended up not being able to go because I had another travel thing happening at the same time. Amsterdam would be awesome, but kind of my big one right now that I really, really want to get into is something in Italy. Mostly because I just want to go to Italy,
Yeah,
I want to see the architecture and the museums and eat the food. Oh gosh. Anything there. It doesn't really matter what show there, 'cause there's so many, but yeah. That's more for location than a specific show.
I feel like we should make some international plans for next year, and we should have those discussions because it's been a few years since I've been over there myself. So I used to
Yeah,
go do the
yeah.
Liverpool show quite a bit. But there's a lot of other shows that I want to get over there to do too, and we should
Definitely.
we should make that happen, I feel like.
Oh yeah, I would love that.
There are
Hmm.
some crazy artists in Europe.
Dude, you're telling me that's why I'm like I worked the All-Stars show in Miami last year, and that was a really big international artist show. Talk about being a small fish in a big pond. I've never been so starstruck and just like, man, I have so much to learn, like so much still to work towards.
Yeah. Yeah, we should make that a thing. We'll talk more about that offline, because I
Yeah.
think that could be fun. Italy especially.
Oh God, yeah,
We
that'd
should
be
talk about
awesome.
that. We'll figure that out for next year, 2026, the European tour.
European tour.
We'll just go for 6 months and be gone.
Oh yeah, we'll make it happen. I'll bring my kid along. It's fine.
Yeah,
They got
yeah,
summer.
yeah. We'll make it happen. So, writing, you do some writing.
Yeah, yeah. Talk about collecting hobbies. I was one of those people in the lockdown that started writing a book. So it's fun. It's something that like, when I was younger, I remember my stepdad bought me a typewriter so that I could, click away in my room writing a little book, and it's not something that I do all the time, but it's definitely one of my creative outlets. Like it's almost more like I was saying, some people paint to get stuff off their chest. I'll journal, or I'll write letters, or I'll just write until I feel better, and then I'll either throw it away or tuck it away somewhere forever. You know, I enjoy that. I think that gets more off my chest than like painting necessarily.
Yeah, yeah. So, are you still writing the same book that you started during COVID?
I haven't touched it in a while. I actually kind of went through a poetry phase a little bit, and so I have a little bit more written for that than the book. But I do want to get back on it. Yeah. Now it's just like downside of collecting hobbies is you have so many projects going on at the same time, and it's like, okay, do I finish this painting that I've started, or do I work on this book that I started, or do I work on this blanket that I started crocheting, like
Yeah.
yeah.
What is your legacy? Do you have like legacy dreams? Like when I'm no longer here, I want to be remembered for this. I want to make sure I check all these things off before, you know, my before my life cycle's done, like do you even think about stuff like that today or not so
um
much?
it's tough because it's like I don't think I necessarily want my legacy to be just one thing, I I think what I care most about is the impression I leave on other people. You know, I would rather be remembered for that than for like, oh, she did this amazing painting once, or it makes me feel a lot better, like in the beginning when you were talking about how you hear people mention my name at shows a lot, and I do not like getting compliments. It makes me like, ooh, but also I really appreciate it because I've spent a lot of the past, decade on creating like the person that I want to be, the person that I want to be perceived as, and building my reputation as such. Because I don't want people to ever be talking behind my back like, yeah, Mary Blake, man, she's such a bitch. Like, she's the worst. Like, oh, what a drag to be around. Like, I would never want someone to say that about me. Oh my gosh.
So you just want to be remembered for being a positive influence.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
for sure.
So do you ever have other artists asking you for to apprentice them, or have you had artists approach you about teaching them to tattoo?
Yeah, I have. It's one of those things where I we not only don't really have room at the shop for another apprentice, but I just don't feel like I have room in my life to have an apprentice because I think that's such a deeply personal relationship between a mentor and a mentee that I kind of missed out on in my apprenticeship. And so I would just hate to be that for someone else. Be like, oh yeah, Mary Blake was just always busy. You know, she could never be there for this or that. So I've never really been able to take anyone on. I definitely help people. Like anytime anyone messages me on Instagram with a question, I love to give my opinion on stuff, you know, and I love to play like I have the answers to everything, but I just don't have the time or mental capacity to actually take on an apprentice full time, you know.
Yeah, so how education's a big topic in today's world, especially when it comes to tattooing and regulations and just
Mm-hmm.
that's one part of the industry where the landscape is rapidly changing right now.
Oh yeah.
And so it talk a little bit about your apprenticeship, what that was like, because like, you know, back in the 90s, what we were talking about at the very beginning of our conversation, you know, apprenticeships were very different, you know, like
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, I just had Skizzy Scott on the show last week, and he was talking about how his apprenticeship was basically in Atlanta, and you know he would be at the tattoo shop, but sometimes his mentor would have him because this guy apparently owned like a dozen different businesses, you know. So he'd be like, Scott,
Mm-hmm.
go over here and do this today, you know, and he
Yeah.
basically was just using him as an errand boy, and then every once in a while would teach him some tattoo stuff or whatever, which is a very pretty common thing. Apprenticeships
Mm-hmm.
probably worked back in the 90s a lot of the times, you know, and then you fast forward into your tattoo apprenticeship. Was your apprenticeship a lot more art focused and tattoo focused, or how was your apprenticeship?
Oh no.
Did you
I
get
will
hazed?
say no, I didn't really get hazed necessarily, but it was very much like you're on your own. But if you fuck up, you get in trouble, right? So it was like trying to figure out the rules to a game where no one taught you how to play the game. So I started tattooing and you know, of course, a lot of it was just cleaning and stuff like that. um I'd have to like crawl around outside on all fours picking up cigarette butts from the yard and shit like that, cleaning the baseboards. And this is, you know, we had flash racks all over the walls, and so I'd have to clean every single individual rack. But then also I'd be tattooing full time and answering the phone and checking the front. And then I was also piercing at the time. So if I was tattooing, I would have to stop tattooing to go do the piercing and then come back. And it was really messy because anything that I did kind of had to be of my own accord. Like any drawing that I did was because I wanted to do it, not because anyone told me to. Because I was kind of on my own, even though I was an apprentice, they were treating me like I was just another artist there, and expecting me to handle things like someone who's knows what they're doing, right? And I had no clue what I was doing. So I would, anytime I wasn't tattooing or cleaning, I would be trying to watch my coworkers tattoo. But you know, after like I talked about my mentor being gone for 6 or 8 months, when he left, the owner of the shop had me tattoo his clients and anyone who walked in, really, I was tattooing them. So when he came back, I got accused of being a shark. Like I stole his clients. And I was like, man, I didn't steal anyone. Like I just didn't want to get fired. Like the owner told me to do these tattoos, so I did them. And it kind of created this animosity that we just never really recovered from, me and my mentor, where he just saw me as someone who was stealing his clients. I was disrespectful. He would give me bad advice on purpose to try and fuck me up tattooing. Like I was told to never use a mag, to only fill stuff in with liners, to use a
Mm.
liner for everything, use a round shader for everything. And I was like, that's not true. I know that's not
All
true.
right.
And I've only been tattooing 6 months and I know that's not true. Um, But then if I didn't listen to his advice, he'd yell at me for not listening to his advice and disrespecting him. And I was like, whatever. So it was kind of like I knew that things were not going how they should be, but also I was kind of doing the work on my own anyways, so I didn't really feel compelled to leave too quickly like those first few years. Honestly, they kind of went by fast, and I was making decent money because it's such a walk-in heavy shop. So I was just like, well, I'll just stay here until I feel like I need to go. And it kind of did come to that point where I was like, okay, I don't want to pierce anymore. I don't want to be the one like that still gets in trouble even though I'm no longer an apprentice. Like I would still get in trouble for other people's fuck ups, and it's like, man, this isn't even my business. Like, but yeah, it that was probably the hardest part was like I finished my apprenticeship and then I thought that that would be the end of it. But then it was like even though I wasn't an apprentice anymore, I still got treated like one for the next couple years. So that was kind of a the worst of it, I guess. But
So if you were going to apprentice an artist today, what would you do differently?
oh gosh, it's so tough because, there's so many arguments now for apprentices where it's like you should pay your apprentice an hourly wage and you shouldn't have them cleaning because they should just be learning how to draw. And for me, it's like I understand kind of the argument in a sense that like yeah, you want your apprentice to draw and learn how to draw and learn how to tattoo, but I think the cleaning side of it, the answering the phone, answering emails, like all of that is in itself preparing the apprentice to be an artist because being a tattoo artist is 100% a full-time job 24/7. Like you're manning your phone, you're answering emails, you have your website, like you have your Instagram. And if you ever work in another shop or have your own private studio, like you're gonna be cleaning and you're gonna have to learn how to handle these things. And so, like, I do think that apprentices should be learning all of those things up front. I don't really agree with the sense that like apprenticeship should only be about art and nothing else because that's not what tattooing is. Like that would be great if it was just about the art, but it's really not. It's so much more that you have to go through.
Yeah, I think you're right. The client experience is a big part of being a tattoo artist and bedside manner. And
Mm-hmm.
so you're right, answering emails, answering phones,
Yeah.
doing all that customer facing stuff is a key part of the job for sure. So, uh, but it's interesting because, uh, you know, that's one of the things that I think has definitely changed. And there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of controversy and discussions
Mm-hmm.
over that subject matter, and it's a pretty heavy subject, that can get heated up pretty quick in regards to
Oh
people's
yeah.
opinions on it.
I know. The man, we talked to a few people about it in the past, Chelsea and I, and some people get really heated when it comes to paying your apprentices or not. And it's so interesting because like when I was an apprentice, I had to pay the shop. I had
Yeah,
an
yeah.
apprentice fee that was like 3 grand or something that I had to come up with up front to pay the owner in order to apprentice at his shop. And so when I heard other people talking about like getting paid, I was like, what do you mean? Like I had to pay. I didn't get paid until I started tattooing and then, I was at like 50%. But but I guess yeah, I just don't have that experience of having a free apprenticeship but then doing free tattoos because in mine I paid an apprentice fee but then I was able to charge people and make 50/50 pretty early. So it kind of I don't know,
Yeah,
worked out in a way.
yeah, I don't know that I necessarily understand the paying your apprentice approach because if you go to art school, the school doesn't pay you to learn art. You pay them to teach you art.
Right.
If
Yeah.
it's like it's to me it's the same principle. It's like, and that's the way it's always been traditionally anyway. You always paid for that
Mm-hmm.
education.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you're paying them, then they're not really an apprentice. They're a shop assistant, and you're paying them
Yeah.
whatever dollars an hour to do that kind of stuff. But
And you
yeah,
also like as an apprentice when you have a mentor, if you are going to conventions with them or traveling with them, you're not only learning how to draw and tattoo, but you're also getting the connections from your mentor. Like it's all interwoven. Like you're meeting the people that they know and you're getting into the conventions that they work and so it's a lot more than just like, oh, I should get paid because I'm answering the phones. Like, come on. You're gonna have to answer the phones for yourself anyways. Like,
well, you're paying for the education because the real question is this: is tattooing easy?
no, Lord, no.
Exactly, but you have so many people like God. You go on social media, and I mean, it's just crazy how many tattoo artists there are in the world today, and like
Yeah.
how many people are just going out and like buying stuff and like
Mm-hmm.
doing shitty tattoos and just like not knowing anything at all about tattooing. You know what I mean? And like
Yeah.
that's a scary thing, So it's like, man, how do you? It's crazy because I would feel like anybody that has a real desire to be a tattoo artist has a desire to be a tattoo artist because they love art and they love the art form of tattooing. And that's
Yeah.
what's inspired them to do that. It's not about chasing fast money or easy money because you just answered the question.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy money.
No, not at all.
It's a very stressful job.
Absolutely. And even like on your relationships with people in your life and like family and friends, before I started tattooing, I had a completely different group of friends than I do now. And I've gone through like marriage and divorce and part of that is just people don't understand how demanding tattooing can be on your time and your energy and it's tough, and that's something like no one ever told me when I started and I had to figure out the hard way. But it is kind of true, like when you're apprenticing and when you're tattooing full time, you don't really have a ton of time to go hang out with people outside of that. And it's especially like even less time when you have a kid. So it's really tough. Tattooing is not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, so now let's get into the weeds a little bit about you and your background. You said
Yeah.
in the beginning of the podcast that you told your parents you wanted to be a tattoo artist and they weren't very supportive of that. How did
Mm-hmm.
you how did you grow up? Do you have siblings? What was your life like as a child in your relationship with your family? Were you a religious family? Like what was that whole scene like? And then to wrap that question up, how does your family view your choice in career now that you've basically gotten really good at it and successful at it?
Um, my parents, they got divorced when I was in the second grade, and I have a twin brother and an older brother. So kind of early on, we were just shuffling back and forth from one house to the other. My dad is a pastor, as well as a teacher. He's retired now, and my mom was also a teacher. So they were both kind of big on education, right? And so growing up as a twin, I've just always been very competitive, ultra competitive. And that's kind of, translated into tattooing, but part of that is just like having someone constantly you're getting compared to them, it just sort of makes it to where I have to put myself push myself even further, right? So when I was in school, I definitely put a heavy emphasis on like getting good grades just because my brother did not get good grades. And so I was like, that's my one up on him is like I'm gonna have good grades and I'm gonna be an artist and do all the things that he doesn't do. Now, my parents in the beginning, of course, with my dad being a pastor, like, and we're in the Bible Belt in Tennessee, religion was really big. But it's funny because I kind of think that I get a lot of my artistic inspiration from religion, like Catholic imagery, right? Is some of my favorite. That really like Renaissance, over the top, gaudy kind of shit. I love churches, man. I love old churches and so that kind of influenced my artistic style in some ways. And my parents have always been pretty progressive, so even though in the beginning they were like, are you sure you can, make money and survive tattooing? Like, why don't you try being an art teacher or do this or that? But honestly, after like the first couple years, they were like, okay, we see that you can, pay your own bills. You can like, because I moved out right away at 18. Um, and so once they saw that I was able to take care of myself, they were pretty cool with it. And now of course, like it's so funny because in the beginning they would kind of tease me on the tattoos that I would get, or like, oh, you got a Tina Belcher tattoo, or oh, you got a SpongeBob tattoo, and uh now they're like, my daughter's an award-winning artist. Oh my gosh, I love to brag about you, like that kind of thing. It's so funny hearing them talk about, I gave your Instagram to my hairstylist because blah 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 blah. It's like, oh, mom, stop.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it's cute.
How
They're
many
into
family
it.
members have you tattooed?
Um, Only my dad and older brother in my immediate family. I've actually never tattooed my twin brother before. My mom wants to get a tattoo, but we haven't pulled the trigger yet. And then I've tattooed a couple cousins, but honestly not that many. It's kind of the same with my high school. I've been working in the same area that I was born in my whole life. Like I've always been here. And so I kind of naturally assumed that I would be tattooing a lot of my classmates and people that I grew up with, but I've only tattooed a few maybe in like the over 10 years I've been tattooing. There's only been a few of them that have come through. I don't
Wow.
know.
What did you tattoo on your dad?
Oh, he's so funny. So, we did some like watercolor stuff on his forearm, and then the band U2.
Yeah.
So he's a big fan of that band, and I guess I don't know if it's the drummer or someone in the band has like a sun on their shoulder, like kind of tribally sort of sun on their shoulder. He
Okay.
wanted me to do that on
Okay.
him. Yeah.
Is that the only tattoo that he has?
Yeah, just those and then like some Greek lettering that we did on his forearm, but he doesn't really have anything too big necessarily. And then my older brother, he had actually gotten a Japanese half sleeve that turned out not so great. It's funny because it's a phoenix that looked like it had a dick and balls hanging from it, like like under its neck or over its head or whatever.
Oh,
Like, so I reworked that tattoo to where it didn't look so phallic.
oh gosh.
Yeah,
That's
it's pretty
crazy.
funny. But yeah, no, I would love to tattoo more of my family, but they just, we're all so busy with our own lives and everyone's kind of spread across the country. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Who's your favorite tattoo artist today?
Ooh, um, right now I love you watch Ink Master?
I do sometimes.
So there is this guy, Freddie Albrighton, on
O-
the last season,
Okay.
and he has this really cool graphic style where it mixes like realism with almost like graffiti kind of doodly simplistic art stuff. And it's not for everyone, I'll say that. But when I saw him on the show and saw the tattoos that he was doing, I was like, man, this is shit that like I have not seen before. And I love his work. Yeah. He's probably one of my favorites right now.
You want to do a collab with him?
That would be tight. Yeah, that'd be sick.
Well, maybe he hears this and you guys can work that out.
Oh, fingers crossed. That would be so cool.
Speaking of Ink Master, would you ever consider doing that show?
You know, I love Ink Master and I used to say all the time that I would do it in a heartbeat, but I found out I found out how much they pay or rather how little they pay. And I honestly, even if I wanted to do it, I don't think I could financially swing doing it. Like being away from my son and the house, like the bills still have to be paid whether I win or not, like, you know. So that's kind of always been like, if if money wasn't an issue, yeah, I would love to do it because I think I have the speed at least that Ink Master requires, right? Like I'm a fast tattooer, but um yeah, it sucks that they don't pay their artists more. It really sucks.
Yeah, yeah, you're pretty much got to self-support yourself for a while you go do that.
Yeah, yeah. But I will say the funny thing, I've always said I would love to do Ink Master, but my dream TV show of being on is The Amazing Race.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I love that show. I think that would be so fun to like travel the world and do those little competitions that they do. Like, The Amazing Race is the goal for sure. Or like
Same.
Survivor or something, right? Like one of those
Mm,
shows.
I don't know about Survivor, but I'm with you on the Amazing Race. That would be a fun one to do
Yeah, so
for
fun.
sure. Do they pay? Do you know? Do you get paid to go on that show?
I
Or
don't
do you,
know, actually.
I wonder if
I mean,
all
that I
those,
know they pay for the travel, obviously, but
yeah, I wonder if all those, yeah, but who pays your house payment while you're gone, right? Like,
yeah, I don't know.
hope you got money in the bank,
Yeah.
son.
Yeah. At least with The Amazing Race, you're like getting to see shit while you're traveling, you know,
Yeah.
instead of just being in a hotel room and then whatever studio they're filming in, right?
I feel like that show would be like super stressful though, in a good way, but like,
Oh,
God,
I'm sure.
oh man, but that would be a fun one to do for sure. Or Big Brother. Have you ever watched Big Brother?
Yeah, yeah. I haven't seen too much of it, but the bits that I have seen, I've been like, this would be interesting to be thrown into the mix, right?
Yeah.
I always tell people I feel like I have a pretty good social game when it comes to like, conventions or hanging out with people or stuff like that. So I feel like on a show like Big Brother or even like Survivor, The Amazing Race, I would just be able to make friends with people and hang out, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that would be fun.
Mm-hmm.
So you said Hell City Phoenix, which is coming up in August.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your next show? Do you got anything in July?
I'm actually doing Fort Wayne, Indiana, the
Oh, the
first
Explorer show?
weekend. Yeah, so that's a couple weeks before Phoenix, but that's my next one. I don't think I have any travel in July.
Are you booked for Fort Wayne completely?
I think I am, maybe. I think so, but Phoenix I'm not booked for.
Okay. Well, there you go. So if there's anybody listening that wants to get an amazing tattoo from Mary Blake,
Oh yeah.
get in her DMs fast and get an appointment booked for Phoenix, Arizona or Fort Wayne,
Mm-hmm.
Indiana, if there's a spot available there. But generally, how far booked out are you? Just on a normal basis.
I try to do 3 months at a time.
Okay.
I feel like 3 months at a time gives me the room to have spontaneous travel. Because, sometimes you get invited to a show or like a buddy has someone drop out of their booth and they're like, hey, do you want to fill in? And I'd rather have the ability to say yes than to have to reschedule like a week's worth of appointments to that have already been waiting 6 months to like another 6 months out, right? So I just do 3 months at a time, kind of quarterly, and I think that works best for me. Yeah.
Is that your dog down there?
Yeah, he's
I see
trying to
a,
poke his head
I
up.
see a little black head poking up.
Yeah, that's my Bobby. And I'm trying to shove him back under the desk. I'm like,
Yeah.
no.
I keep seeing this little black fluff of hair popping
I
up.
know, yeah. He's being cute right now.
That's funny. Well, how do people get in touch with you if they want to get tattooed? Instagram is best, or what's the best way? How do you take
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Mary Blake. It's just my name. And then my email is maryblaketattoos@gmail. But Instagram, I feel like I'm definitely an artist that's always on their phone, so I will see the message.
Sweet. Well, I might fly out to Phoenix too just to hang out and have some fun out there. It's
You
been a few years since I've
should.
been to that one, and
Oh, it's so much fun.
see, it's hot.
It's hot, yeah, but you're in the convention all day when the sun's up, and then when it goes down, you come out of the convention and you go to the pool.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciate you taking time and talking to me today. It's been fun, and I've been looking
Yeah.
forward to this for a while. So I
Me
hope it was good for
too.
you too, and I look forward to getting this one out there. And we
Was
got to
it as
work on
good
our
for
book
you as it
too.
was for me?
Yeah, yeah, it was good. We can have a second date.
Oh, hell yeah.
And we'll talk about that European tour for sure.
Definitely, yeah.
I'm serious about that.
Me
That'll be
too. Well,
fun.
thank you for having me on. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Business of Tattooing. I appreciate you tuning in and being part of this journey to level up the industry one conversation at a time. If you found value in today's episode, do me a favor. Subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another artist who could use this knowledge. Got questions or topics you want me to cover? Hit me up on Instagram at NoFlashNinja or email me at rob@electrumsupply.com. And remember, tattooing is an art, but running a successful business is a skill. Keep pushing, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time on The Business of Tattooing.